This is the Biz News Podcast, one-on-one conversations with experts in business and personal development.
Many new businesses, even those starting out with mountains of money from venture capitalists or angel investors, fail, and some of them awfully quickly. While there's a long list of typical reasons for business failure, Nikki Blacksmith, co-founder and CEO of Symeta Behavior Science, formerly known as Blackhawk Behavior Science, points to mismanagement of human capital. She joins us in this edition of Biz News Interviews to tell us more. Nikki, first, tell our listeners and our viewers a little bit about yourself and the company that you run.
Sure. So just to introduce myself, I'm Nikki Blacksmith. I am co-founder and CEO of Symeta Behavior Science, which was formerly Blackhawk. We're in the process of a transition to a new brand and a new name. I am an industrial organizational psychologist by training, and our company utilizes a vast wealth amount of information from the organizational sciences to help investors assess, analyze, and predict performance of founding teams that they hope to invest in. So essentially, we help them with the team due diligence up front, and we use psychometric assessments and principles of team effectiveness.
Well, as you know, and I think most of our viewers who are in business know, 20%, maybe more, of new businesses fail, boom, first year. And then if you look 5 years down the road, you see very few of them left. Why is that? What are they not doing right? And there could be 10,000 reasons, of course, but perhaps it has something to do with humanity.
It sure does. I think from there's lots of lists out there that talk about the different reasons why companies fail, but always on the top of those lists are the people factors. So leadership and effectiveness, co-founder conflict, team dysfunction. But if you think about it, let's say they fail because they didn't have a good marketing strategy or their product wasn't a good fit. The root cause of all that is the people. There's somebody who's building the product. There's somebody who's designing the marketing strategy. So having the right people in place in the team from like a knowledge and expertise standpoint, but also from understanding how to collaborate and build a high-performing team is so critical. So it really, in my opinion, all comes down to the people, no matter what the reason is for their failure. You can always trace it back to the people.
I once had a broadcast executive tell me that if he was right half the time, 50% of the time in the hires that he made, he felt would go down as a genius in the business. That's sort of doing it all kind of rather haphazardly. Is there a better way to hire and develop people?
Yes, absolutely. So if you think about the customer marketing and product development, we follow a very similar model, right? We understand who is that ideal recruit or ideal person that you want to hire. And it all starts with understanding performance. What does performance mean? I like to tell people that if you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there. And so it's kind of the similar, like if you don't know what you want this person to do and what you want them to do well, it's pretty hard to find the right person. So we start with defining, and understanding performance, and then identifying factors that science has identified as predictive of performance in those areas. So for example, if you are a salesperson, being extroverted, social, outgoing is a factor of importance because you're going to be dealing with a lot of people. It's not the only factor, of course, there's a whole host of them, but the idea is to map those skills, the knowledge, the abilities, the personality characteristics to factors of performance to actually identify what it is you want. And then you can go out and say, all right, now let's find this person that meets this profile and try to understand what they care about. So understanding the psycho, like demographics, what are their needs in that job? What are they expecting? A lot of job applicants want to know that they're going to walk into a good culture and that they're not going to have a toxic manager. So it's a combination of understanding the person and helping them and really selling that environment to them. This is the right place for them to come so you can get the top talent.
That is certainly not an easy thing to do. Otherwise, we'd have uh, people staying in the jobs forever and be happy as clams.
Mhm.
What goes wrong?
Oh, there are so many things. Typically, it usually comes down to the manager or leader, though. Most, uh, you know, people leave their manager, not the actual company. Um, and so it's really about understanding how to manage, motivate, engage, and keep those people inspired. And that is a completely different skill set than what managers and leaders usually like have to get into that position. So what typically happens is somebody's really good at that technical expertise. They're a great engineer. And so then they get promoted into the management or leadership position, and it's a completely different skill set. And so it's just that we have a process and a system that has not recognized that. And it's not uncommon to have people in a management or leadership position that have never had any training whatsoever in managing and leading others. And so it's kind of, they do what they've seen before, even though that might have not been the best approach either.
One of the things that's always puzzled me is that the humanity that we have in our businesses is seen as on the books as liability. Shouldn't it be on the other side of the page?
Yes, it should. You know, I like to tell our clients that the people are their greatest liability, but they're also their greatest asset. So it's really the critical, like key factor in success is identifying those right people. Because if you don't, it can be detrimental to the business. But if you do, it can be the reason why you become a unicorn, $1 billion company. You've got those right people in there that just know how to work together and can succeed. So
Now,
definitely is, I think they should be seen as an asset.
and that would be an unusual set of books. I can imagine the bean counters down the hall would just be screaming into the midnight hours.
Yes. Exactly.
Well, it's a picture we live to see one of these days. Uh, you and your business partner have written a new book. Tell us about that.
Sure. The book is called Data-Driven Decision Making in the Entrepreneurial Ecosystem, Tools for Maximizing Human Capital. It's the
Oh,
longest
so,
title ever.
hang on a second there. Deliver that name once again because it's a long
I
title.
know, it's way too long. Data-Driven Decision Making in the Entrepreneurial Ecosystem, Tools for Maximizing Human Capital. So essentially, the book is all about how do we understand and manage and motivate, improve performance of the people, like human capital. And we like to call it capital because it really is just like financial capital, except it's the human side of things. And so how can we manage that using data, just like we look at trends for marketing and predict financial projections? There are also ways we can use data to enhance the performance of the people. So the book is really a series of chapters that talks about different levels of the organization. So individuals, teams, organizations, and different phases of the organization. So, you're starting up, you're bringing in new hires to now you're growing and you're trying to figure out how to measure organizational performance. And so yes, that's the reason for the long title. If someone can grade me a quicker way to summarize that, I'd love to know.
Well, getting beyond the long title, and you might win an award for longest title of the year.
I'm
What?
sorry, I'm an academic. I come from the academic world. I'm trying to get past that.
Well, we'll forgive you for that, but could you give us a couple of take-home tips for our listeners and viewers that they could implement?
Yes, so I think first is the fact that there are ways to measure people. Um, and that can range from understanding the person characteristics that we talked about earlier, like what are the factors of the people that predict job performance. Also, you can measure those intangible factors, and this is where people usually have, struggle because they're like, how do you measure, these intangible people factors that emerge out of nowhere and can't be seen or touched, like, team cohesion or team psychological safety. So if you work with industrial organizational psychologists, which is career that I've been in for nearly 20 years, that is exactly what we were trained to do, is to understand how to measure those intangible factors. So there's lots of tools out there that can be used that are either off the shelf or they can hire someone to help them with it. A lot of organizations, especially Fortune 500 companies today, have IO psychologists in-house building those kind of tools for them. So I have a lot of colleagues at Google and Dropbox and Capital One, and they're all building those kind of tools for the organization. So it's difficult. I'd like to think for startups, it's not really an option, right, to hire a $100,000 executive. So what we're trying to do is really build those kind of DIY tools to help them do that. And I think one of the easiest tips I can give maybe co-founders or startup founders is to, let's say they're looking for a co-founder. Aside from the skills and knowledge and abilities for the actual position, what's really critical is for them to understand the shared values, or if they even have shared values. Because if two founders come in and they value different things, it can be a very difficult process to move forward. And I've struggled with some of this myself with some people I've worked with. I'm a very science, data, logic oriented person. And working with people that don't value that is a derailer for me. And as they want to put things out there right away, and I'm like, wait, can we say that officially based on the science and the data? And so that can be a struggle. And not only shared values, but also shared vision. It sounds really obvious, but I've worked with startups who the founders think that they have the same vision for the future, but if you ask them individually, like, what is this company? What is the purpose? Um, you'd be surprised how many founders don't have the same mental model for what exactly they're trying to do. So a lot of the time, those things, they seem so fluffy, shared values and visions, so they don't necessarily get discussed up front, but they're really the foundation for building the business. It's really, really difficult to build a business if the founders are going in two different directions. So having those conversations about, making sure they're like 100% on the same page about the vision, that they share the same values of how the company is going to grow and evolve, and that they have the same commitment to the organization. What I see a lot of times is founders are desperate to find a co-founder because it's a lot of work, and they bring on somebody that has a full-time job maybe and says, yeah, I want to do this. But eventually they need somebody who's going to take that risk and absorb it with them. And so having different commitment levels and willingness to take on that risk can be a struggle for co-founders. So those are a few tips. I have plenty more where that comes from.
Well, let us give your company's name and website again so people can find it.
Sure. It's Symeta Behavior Science, Symeta, and that's the combination of the words system and meta. So really, we take a systems approach to understanding how startups work. The person is in a team, that's in a startup, that's in an ecosystem. And so really understanding how all those factors interconnect and interplay with one another. And meta means the awareness of oneself. So it's really about understanding your own system that you're in. And so we help teams understand the other people that they work with, how there might be multiple team systems that need to get things done. and their broader ecosystem, what is the environment that they're working in. As I mentioned before, the company used to be called Blackhawk. And so we're in the middle of the transition, but probably the easiest way and the most simple way is going to the website Blackhawk with an E at the end, .io. So we're going to be keeping that link up for a while, so it's going to be hard to miss, but once they get there, they'll see the Symeta name. It's not a fun process to be in the middle of this, and I apologize to your listeners for all the confusion, but we really taken a strong look at, wanting to make sure that we are delivering our brand and expressing who we are and what we do in a way that meets our values. And so it was time for a change. So they can go to Blackhawk, BLACKHAWKE.io.
We are trying to ask everybody that we interview of late, how will artificial intelligence impact what you are doing?
Oh, that's a fun topic. I think about artificial intelligence a lot from the high level of what is it going to do to the workplace and to understanding, the fourth industrial revolution, all the way down to what is it going to do for the individual. And I think for our business, it's going to improve it exponentially because we're going to be able to, instead of having a consultant come in and give you very tailored advice, which is very expensive, we're going to be able to take that knowledge and expertise and build it into our system so that users can get those actionable insights that are tailored to them when they need them exactly. And that requires a lot of data, a lot of understanding of the teams in the organizations in itself, but that's the beauty of data, right? It's not only does it share information, but it can point you in the right direction of what you need to do. And for us, our biggest goal is to prevent problems. We see the same team and leadership problems over and over and over again. And we know the factors that lead to those problems. So what we can do with the right data is send an alert to say, hey, you're kind of heading the wrong path here. Let's step in and adjust the situation before you get to catastrophe, before the team explodes. And usually teams don't just, have a dysfunction, then all of a sudden break up. It builds up over time. And it's something that we can identify and predict and prevent. And that's our goal with the artificial intelligence, is to use that to really allow startups and venture capitalists, those in the entrepreneurial ecosystem who don't have the money or the time to bring on a whole consultant team of organizational psychologists. We give them that on-demand information. So we're very excited about what it has to offer our business. The downside is thinking about how is this going to change the workplace overall. Bringing in artificial intelligence, a lot of people are worried that it's going to replace their jobs. So I'm talking about doing the work a consultant might do. So I might be really making some consultants uncomfortable right now. But the way I see it is, and a colleague of mine from Google and I are writing a academic theoretical paper around artificial intelligence to think about how do we move forward and create a workplace that leverages AI instead of lets AI create problems. And the biggest issue right now is the fear that people have about what it's going to do to their jobs. That it's going to turn the workplace into kind of robotics, and remove that humanity factor. And he and I argue that, if we do it the right way, if we put the human in the center and say, what can we do how can we use AI to actually elevate and make this person better at what they do instead of replacing them, and using AI as, a team member or an aid for them to make decisions, then that can really be transformational. It's going to take a lot of work, and leaders really have to step back and think about what values do they care about and how are they training that into their AI? Because a lot of times they don't even realize when they're training these programs that they're implicitly or unconsciously embedding values. And so that's what it really takes, a conscious effort to step back and look at how can we ensure that this is doing good and increasing the humanity of the workplace and not replacing it.
You've been listening to the Biz News Podcast. We welcome your input. Send your email to editor@biznews.com. That's BIZGNUS.com. Thanks for listening.